And here we are, we're recording. So today is really kind of a very special day. We've got a special guest. You can see Tim Reid up the top there. Tim, do you want to wave hi? So people know, yeah, that's Tim. And if you can read, it says Tim Reid. And anyway, what I wanted to share with you today is something that I think is a really fantastic business model that Tim has come up with. And I'm going to turn the meeting over to Tim in about 10 minutes. But as you know, part of your payment for joining the ROI group like this is you have to listen to me for 10 minutes. So I'm going to do a quick introduction on a few things, and then we're going to turn it over to Tim. So I'm going to share my screen with you guys. And I know most of you have done this before with yours truly. If you have any questions at all, I'd really ask you guys to put them in the chat box, all right? And it really helps all of us, especially Tim, if people put their questions in the chat box, because really what people want to do, gee, I'm trying to make it work here. What people want to do is, especially Tim, is he wants to, he wants to be interrupted, okay? He wants to hear from you all, and so do I. So type your questions into the chat box as we go, and we'll try and make sure that everything gets, the reason I'm sort of stumbling over my words here is I'm trying to admit people and talk at the same time. Zoom used to let us just let everybody in, but now it's, when people join at different times. So again, welcome to the ROI group. This is meetup number 15. So we're a relatively young group. We have about 500 members. We usually get about 25 or 30, sometimes 40 people joining live. And then the rest of the folks, what happens is they have to watch it later because they have real jobs, and they can't be people like me who can just show up at noon. So as I said, we're going to hear from Tim Reid and his day home model in a couple of minutes. But first, I'm going to talk to a couple of other things. This is actually relevant, Tim, to what you're going to talk about. And I wanted to just reiterate for people who are new to this, that how you can actually live practically rent-free. And this is a story I tell over and over and over again, because I do coach people who have lots of money. I've got a couple of billionaires I coach. I've got a few people who are worth tens of millions of dollars. And I do have some people who are not wealthy. I do a little bit of pro bono coaching. And I would do more pro bono coaching if I could afford it. But anyway, so I'm going to talk about this, Tim, and it is relevant, and it's kind of hard to see the relevance of it, but I think it will all come full circle when we get to your presentation in a few minutes. So I want to talk about how a person who maybe doesn't earn a whole lot of money can live free, or close to rent-free. I tell the story about Sean the Handyman. It's based on a true character. He actually happens to be in my house as we speak, doing a little bit of work for me. My mother-in-law needs some work in her room, and he's doing that. He's a wonderful, wonderful guy. He's a charming Irishman, but he has never wanted to own his own home. He has never been really somebody committed to home ownership, and really I think because he's very fearful of unexpected costs. Every one of us on the call, I'm sure, are real estate investors. We own our own homes. We're lucky to do that. We own some investment property, most of us, and as the furnace breaks down, you got to fix it. But if you're a tenant, you have cost certainty. So he never really wanted to own his own home, and that's kind of why. But he's getting older, maybe he's slowing down a little bit. He's here, so I better be quiet, right? And so I explained to him what is an augmented tenancy, and that is kind of a fancy name that we've given a form of tenancy. And what we did, I think it's on the next slide here. No, it's not. I'll have to just remember it. So what he did was he rented a townhouse from a willing landlord, and the basement had its own separate entrance, and he made a deal, and I helped a little bit. He made a deal with the landlord. Landlord would provide the materials, and Sean would build a really nice one-bedroom apartment in the basement, and then rent that out. Sean would take the responsibility to do that, and he would split those revenues with the landlord. That's what it means to be an augmented tenant, all right? So let's assume for a moment he rents the townhouse for $1,800, builds the one-bedroom apartment down the basement, rents it out for, say, $1,400. He lives in a place where it's a very hot rental market. And maybe he gives the landlord a couple $100 extra, so the landlord's making a little bit of more money, doesn't have to do any work. But now Sean's rent has dropped from $1,800 a month to maybe, you know, if he keeps, say, $1,200 to maybe $600 a month. That is a significant change in his personal well-being, all right? And the augmented tenancy, we're seeing it over and over again in many different places. You obviously have to put that in the lease. And we're seeing residential tenancies now that are 3 years and 5 years and 7 years long. Because if you're an augmented tenant, you know, like Sean is, and you're living for $600 a month, or maybe even less if you're lucky, you know, you don't want to move again because you're living almost rent-free in a very nice place. All right, so I hope everybody's clear. And I just wanted to share this story because it is a Thanksgiving. We just had Thanksgiving. It might have been a little more limited this year because, you know, I have 5 kids. They all have, you know, life partners or husbands or wives and grandchildren. We weren't able to get everybody together other than on Zoom, so it's not quite the same. But he's a big-hearted Irishman, and he's been taking in a lady. She has her own children, but her children basically ignore her. This Thanksgiving, just before her mom passed away, and so he said, you know, come to our place. You know, we have turkey. Come and see it. And when Sean, who does not have a lot of money, needed a new van because he's a handyman, he needs a van full of tools. When his van finally gave up the ghost, he needed $12,000 to buy a new one, and he didn't have that, and he doesn't have any. He's not a bankable person. If he had gone to you know, one of our chartered banks, they wouldn't lend him 50 cents, even though he's a very reliable person. So he went to this lady that he's been taking in for 15 years or so and said, could you lend us $12,000 to buy a van? And she said, certainly. And he said, I'll pay it back over 3 years. And she said, no problem. So when they went to give her her first loan payment on Sunday at Thanksgiving dinner, she said, Sean, it's fully paid for. And he just shared that story with me, and I wanted to share it with you because this is a very difficult time for a lot of people. And, you know, including me, I have to admit, you know, I don't like being shut in and locked away, and I'm sure people don't. And a lot of my clients and a lot of my friends, you know, they put on a good face, a brave face, but they are suffering in many ways. 8 million Canadians lost their jobs. 8.2 million, I think, were on the CERB benefit, the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit. About 40 million Americans lost their jobs. Imagine the really difficult situation that's going on. So when you hear a nice story like that, I just wanted to pass it on. All right, I want to make sure I'm recording. Yep, I am. Now, just before I turn it over to Tim, I keep saying that, I want to talk about this model. Some of you have seen it before, but it's very similar to Tim's model. This was a model called Mold Busters, which was started by a coaching client of mine who's a brilliant young Russian living in Canada now. And it's a very simple model. What he does is he has a website called Mold Busters, and people can book an inspection if they think they have mold in their house. If you're having trouble breathing, if hopefully it's not COVID, but if you're having trouble breathing and you know your sinuses are irritated, it could be mold, and people book these things. Now here's what he does. It's a very, very cool model. What he does is to, you know, not everybody wants to be a mold inspector. So what he does, because he speaks Russian, is he advertises in Russia and Ukraine and other places for people who would like to come to Canada, which frankly, if you're living in Russia, you might want to do. So they could immigrate here and they come here and they have a job as a mold inspector, right? So he gives them the equipment they need, and this website provides all the reports they need. It's kind of like, you know, home inspectors or building inspectors or appraisers. They've got kind of a standard report, and they just put in the variables. So they can go in with their infrared cameras, find out if you have any mold in your building, and they can make about $200 or $250 per visit. Some of that goes to the mold inspector, some of that goes to the Mold Busters website. So that's kind of the basic business model. a few months or maybe a couple of years after he started, Michael, you'll see him on the next slide. That's his Bitmoji. Michael calls me up and he says, Bruce, I have a real estate aspect to this business model. I said, real estate and mold? How does that work? I mean, you know, what do you mean? Real estate investment with Mold Buster. So what he does, it's a really cool model, is now he buys homes in the cities and towns where he has mold inspectors. He can advertise for people who want to be mold inspectors, you know, in Eastern Europe or anywhere else. They can come to Canada, they have a job, and they have a place to live. So there's mold inspectors, you know, but I don't know, 4, 5, 6, maybe more mold inspectors in a house. They pay a little bit of rent, they get their equipment, they have a job. And so you can sort of see how you could sometimes have an operating business that has a real estate component and they work really, really closely together. I thought it was brilliant. I don't know how many houses he has like that, but it's quite a few. All right, that's enough of that. It is kind of like something that I did do in my pivot course with Jen Walton. You can see Jen on the screen here, a young woman who started a third-party Airbnb hosting business. So something that I'm going to point out after Tim's presentation, and it is true about Mold Busters as well, is that you could actually do this model with practically no money. Like, let's say you have no money or very little money. You could probably do this model. And you say, well, how would you ever do that? Well, that's what Jen did. She would call up landlords. Are you making enough money? Well, not really. You know, my cap rate is 4.5%, which isn't really great. Well, let me manage your unit. I'll put it on Airbnb for you, which is a pain in the butt if you know anything about Airbnb to actually manage it. I'll do that, charge you some money. And so she started to build a portfolio. She didn't own any of that. So you could, in theory, do the augmented tenancy for what we're going to hear from Tim and also for Mold Busters, even if you didn't have any money. You could rent a house, fill it up with mold inspectors or whatever, and you know, pay the landlord rent as long as you had the landlord's permission to do an augmented tenancy. So you can sort of see how you could actually get into this business and not actually own any of your property, but become a sub-landlord. And in effect, a form of ownership. And of course, as Jen built her business, I don't know how many units she has. I don't remember. It's a few hundred now, I think. She became very successful financially. And now she owns lots of real estate. So you could get into this even if you didn't have a lot of money. I hope I made it clear. All right, what we're going to hear now is we're going to hear from Tim. So get ready to unmute yourself, but I'm going to do a short introduction. We're going to hear about Tim's day home business model. I call it Little Steps Academy, but that's just my term for it. How to build a personal business for life in real estate and childcare. And it's a very, very cool model. Let me just tell you, I think Tim could be in GQ, you know, as a male model. You know, he looks good, and he's been a real estate coach. He's been 10 years as a real estate investor. He's a telecom engineer. He does over $1 million in transactions over the last 8 years. That's per year, not over the whole 8 years. He's been with an amazing girlfriend for 9 years. You should marry her, Tim. You know, hang on. He's been a speaker. He's a best-selling author, a real estate consultant, and he just got fed up with the corporate world, like many of us have, and left in 2016. Breaking news, Tim: once you become an entrepreneur, you can never go back. That's it. You'll never be an employee again. And his number one priority, which I think is beautiful, is helping people build wealth, which we all need to do, and we need to do a better job, including me. He's written books. You know, I only have one addiction, Tim, and that's writing. And I guess you have the same addiction. Success in the Economy, Live Your Passion, and he's sold a lot of books as well. So I think with all of that said, I'm going to now switch slide decks. Give me a second here. And we're going to go to Tim's slide deck here in a second. And Tim, I'll change the slides. It's your turn.
Well, thanks so much for that intro, Bruce. And you did edit my slide there. So I have to say I'm a big fan of Bruce Firestone, and I've been working with him and his creative mind is just, you know, amazing. So thanks so much for having me here today and speaking in front of your group. I'm just so honored to be able to have the opportunity. So today what we're going to be talking to, and Bruce did the intro, so I don't have to, so that's awesome. We're going to be talking about taking a real estate portfolio model and adding a business to it, and a little bit about childcare. I want you to write down some questions or write down a couple things, because science tells us we're 7 times more likely to remember stuff if we're writing it versus typing it. But type your questions in the chat box, like Bruce said. So I always liked the business of childcare. I always knew it's in demand. I always knew it was relatively profitable, but I never really knew how to get into it or how to get started. And I'll kind of tell that story as we go along here. So next slide there, Bruce. So that's 2 important questions. Next slide again, please. So again, thanks for having me here, and thanks everybody for showing up today. And think of any questions, just put them in the box, and we'll be happy to stop and talk about them. I don't want this to be lecture style. If there's anything that comes up, just let me know. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So what we're going to cover today, first of all, what the childcare business model is all about, and then next, please. And then how you can add more properties to your portfolio faster to build your net worth. And then how do you get started? Like, how does one get into childcare? Because I didn't really know how to in the beginning either. So go ahead, next there. Next. So a little bit about the business model and background. Like I said, I always knew that childcare demand continues to go up. We keep having kids, even though the birth rate's going down a little bit, people are still having lots of kids, and the demand versus supply has always been way out of whack. In most areas of Canada, I don't think, if you ask parents in any major city that childcare is easy to find, you're probably going to get a no across the board. And parents are fiercely loyal once they find caregivers and a childcare provider they really love. My best friend, James, here in Calgary, he's got 4 little girls. 4 little girls, one's brand new, if you can believe it. He moved out of Calgary, where I live, and he had a day home provider. And he drove more than 40 minutes to and from when he moved out of town to still go back to that caregiver. So that right there proved how, to me, you know, loyal people are to their providers of childcare once they find one they really like. Go ahead, next there, Bruce. And because of what's happened recently, because of COVID-19, so just to let you know, I got into this business last year, end of last year. Wow. And now we've gone through this whole pandemic situation, and I have friends that own big brick and mortar daycares, and they were closed, mandated closed by the government. And this model is a smaller environment, 6 kids to 1 caregiver. We were able to stay open the entire time, and we're also very careful and very, yeah, go ahead, Bruce.
So a question for you. Do you make the parents sign like a bubble agreement to, you know, to sort of contain the group?
It's just 6 maximum per house is the...
I meant, you know, like I have heard of daycares that say, look, those 6 kids and those 6 families are the only 6 families that you can mix with. So you do, in effect, form a bubble.
So that's basically what we've done due to utilization, and we have different age groups by home. So there is a couple where they go one day in one house, one day in the other, but everybody's been so great and so careful, and they really appreciated all the extra work we've done. They are being probably more careful than we are with their families. So that's why we've been able to keep everything you know, isolated as much as possible. We move some kids around. I think we've got 2 that go back and forth out of 30 families. So we've really minimized that, which is nice because you have that flexibility when you've got multiple sites. So great question, Bruce. So day homes are often out of the brick and mortar world run by parents that are wanting to stay home with their own kids, right? And they don't want to pay for childcare. So they don't have any, you know, formal education. They kind of cook whatever meals. They don't have the ability to cater to allergies. You could click a couple more there. So also that once those parents have kids that are grown up, they close their day home down. So there's no continuity from, you know, going from home to home to home with groups. And the parents really want high quality learning because they want to prepare their kids and have them having routines put in place and things like that. So when they go off to school, they've got a good routine and they're used to working and sharing and having groups. And in an informal day home environment, that's often not the case. Go ahead, next slide. So they also, shockingly, this was a shock to me when I started to interview some of the parents before we bought into this business, is that some daycare providers don't even bring the kids outside, which is just a travesty to me. Like how kids can't get any physical activity. That's just crazy in my world. So that's one of the things that we designed the home. So they have a big backyard. They've got fenced place to play. They go outside every day, and we go to the parks and do excursions and things of that nature. A little bit different over the last few months, but we still do them. And that's really important to our parents. And also having allergies or dietary restrictions, because we have a small group of kids, we can really accommodate to those needs. So if a parent has a specific, maybe vegetarian diet they want their child to have, then we're easily able to do that, as opposed to having 500 kids or 120 children. You have to have standards just because it becomes logistically really hard. So we've got those options. And like I said, the ages are mixed. So we've got continuity. So right from infant homes, right up to preschool homes, that the kids get to make friends and they get to stay with each other and graduate, was what we call it, from home to home, from one home to the next over the years. And the parents love that because they get to, build friends in the same area, same neighborhood, and they're likely in most cases going to go to the same schools when they go to preschool. And this is how we provide WOW service. And this is really about our system and how we manage our staff, because the staff is the absolute keystone of any business. I mean, Richard Branson will tell you this, and Bruce has run big companies. I'm sure he knows this. Having key employees will make or break your business. And we provide fully systemized early education programs. And that's why we call our directors, because they're the director of a full program. It's activities, it's early learning. They've got crafts they do every day. They're learning their ABCs and numbers and starting to learn, how to read when they're younger. Where in another, non-formalized setting, it doesn't really happen that way. So if you think about, go ahead, Bruce.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Well, actually, I did. So I really love the idea of calling your caregivers directors, but I wanted to underline for people on the call that Tim's directors live in the home full time. So in a city like Ottawa, for example, I'm not allowed to run a business in somebody else's home, but I'm allowed to run a personal business like this in my own home. So if the director, the caregiver, the early childhood educator is living in the home and she is offering this service, that in almost every jurisdiction that I'm familiar with in Canada and the United States is in fact a legal occupation.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the 6-to-1 model is part of that, Bruce. And it's a good point that you made that distinction. And this is where you can have that. We've got a form of the augmented tenancy going with our directors. So they get to live in the home full time. And just a note on the homes. So in all of these areas where these homes reside, the rent that is charged for a property of that size, and Bruce has a wonderful story of a single mom he helped with this same model, is that they have a greatly reduced rent, and they get to live in a big, beautiful home that they live in all hours other than from 7 to 4 after pickup time. And they get this big, beautiful home they get to live in, and they wouldn't normally be able to afford a house that nice in an area that prestigious, because these are the nice areas of town.
So sorry to interrupt again, Tim, but we've got a question from Ken, actually a two-part question, if you don't mind. These are unlicensed, so because you're only taking in 6 kids, you don't need a license. Is that correct?
So it's not a licensed daycare as far as accreditation is concerned in Calgary. However, that's why the 6-to-1. So as soon as you go over 6-to-1, then you have a brick and mortar day home regulation where you have to have different staff, education, and things of that nature. But we do have umbrella insurance for all the operation across the board.
And are the insurance costs, Ken is asking, so here's the 2 parts. What are the insurance costs? Are they exorbitant? And do you train your directors? Do you actually train them, and do you charge them, or is it free?
No, we train them. Yeah, we train them for no charge. That's part of the deal. So they're going to shadow one of our existing directors first for about a month, and also to get, whenever there's a transition, which is fairly rare, but when it does happen, we have them shadow one of our directors for 2 to 3 months, depending on their childcare experience. But all of our staff members have always had some sort of child experience. Either they had a big family, they've had their own kids, they worked in a brick and mortar daycare. A lot of them come from those environments because they don't like the the big crazy 120 model anymore, so they come from us. And almost all of our staff are referral from our existing staff.
And are the insurance costs really high, or?
No, not at all. They're a couple grand a year. It's about 400 and change a month.
So the insurance costs are reasonable. And Ken, you're getting in a lot of questions here. Do you provide the food, or do the parents bring it?
So we provide the food unless it's really specific dietary needs for a child. So then the parent will typically bring the food, and then they'll just designate the snacks that fit within their diet. But we do prepare all the meals while the child's are with us.
Thank you.
So less regulation, more flexibility because of that. So on the next slide there. So outdoor activities is absolutely part of our program. We go to parks. Backyard play spaces is a requirement. So as your wheels are turning in real estate, what property will work? Condos don't. Like the smallest property we have is a townhouse that has a really big backyard and a corner lot. So that's part of the mandate there. Healthy, fresh prepared meals, and we change over the menu by seasons. And that way it's always, a little bit different, but it's all, healthy, natural stuff, good food that the kids are eating so that they're not just being, fed. I remember back when I was in before and after school care, I remember celery sticks and cheese whiz and celery sticks and peanut butter and crackers, white flour, all this many years ago now. I might look young, but I'm older than I look. So that's what I remember from the meals back in the day. So we made some major improvements, and I know that's important to all parents everywhere these days. And our amazing directors, like I say, are the keystone of the success of our operation, because they do an amazing job for us. We take really good care of them, and the parents love our ladies. They'll ask them to do birthday parties for their kids, and they're always in contact. It's just the best thing. We just love it. So just people are of course wondering, what do the directors get paid? So they get paid overtime plus the workforce minimum in your province, but they get a lot of benefits for that, because they get greatly reduced rent. It's about 2.5 times what they pay in rent. We pay their utilities over and above a certain amount. They pay the rest, but we give them utility credit. We provide internet for the homes as well. We have a really nice app that we use that allows the directors to take pictures of the kids that they're playing. So even though the parents at work, they get to see on their app on their break time or lunchtime what's going on with their kids. And that's a technology that's really awesome. So even though they can't be there in person, they can still see what's going on in their child's day, which they really like. And the directors, that comes right off their check. The rent, and then the utilities are also paid for. And this is a great work-live environment where they don't have to commute. They don't have to pay for gas. They don't have to get ready for 2 hours and get on a bus or drive their car or pay for parking. All these things that we're realizing now because of this certain situation in the world, our directors in this business model have enjoyed for years. And they love that.
Well, Tim, if you look at the background that you're using on Zoom, it's New York City. And people are known to have big commute times in New York City, whether they're going by subway, by train, or by car. And to me, it's never made sense that you get up in the morning in your suburb, you get in your Tesla, you drive an hour and a half to work, you go up 30 stories into an office building with bad air and bad light and windows that don't open. And today, that you can where you can get sick. And then 8 or 10 hours later, you reverse the process. You spend maybe 2 hours or 3 hours a day, commuting 15 hours, maybe a week of your life flushed down the toilet. And the wear and tear on people is incredible. So I really think this is not only a good thing, saving money, saving time, saving stress, but it is also a very significant contributor to reduction in CO2 production.
Well, I'll tell you a really quick story. So
okay, please.
My uncle, so he works for the government in Ontario, and he used to live in Whitby, and he had a big, very large, beautiful home. And he finally had enough of getting stuck in traffic and having a 4-hour commute to get home. So he moved to Toronto, downtown almost, and his commute became 15 minutes, and never been happier. He wouldn't trade it for the world. So that fundamental is absolutely true.
Right. So we got a couple more questions for you, Tim.
Yeah, I think it's a question there.
Pam Cripps is asking, do you ever envision going to a 24/7, 364, daycare model?
Great question, and I absolutely am looking at that. We explored that sort of mid pandemic craziness because I know that's a need that's really underserved, pandemic or not. That there's all kinds of shift workers, all kinds of machine workers. You know, your police, your nurses and doctors, and your firemen, and all those people. They have just had to live with it for so long. So that's one of the expansion plans that we have in our growth plan over the next 5 years is to add 24-hour locations that will be accredited level location just because of we did the numbers and I think we might be able to do one smaller one with 2 shifts, but then the director living in the home becomes a bit of a question. So we're absolutely growing there because it's a massive demand, but it does have some logistics that we have to change, and that's going to be by region what you can do for 24 hours. But there are out there a couple of them, but there's so few and far between that regular childcare is so hard to find. 24 hours is like a unicorn out there in the marketplace. So it's a major need to be filled.
Denise and Stuart are asking, how do you manage sick days for the directors?
Great question. So we have substitutes that they like to make some extra cash, and they're also referrals from our existing directors. And often what happens is our subs wind up taking their place. And the reason why people typically leave, and normally our staff stick around for 2 to 3 years, is either they have their own kids and they want to move in with their spouse, or they go to school. So those are the 2 reasons why people leave the program. But there's some that have been there 6, 8, 9 years. But we have 2 substitutes, typically 2 to 3 for every group of 5, waiting on the bench. So if someone gets sick, also my significant other, she could step in if needed, if somebody's got a doctor's appointment, that kind of thing. So that's how we handle sick days and subs. Yeah, like I said, rare cases we'll advertise for staff, but that 95% are referrals from our existing staff members, and they typically stay on that 2 to 5 year time horizon. And they all have previous childcare experience in some form or fashion. And staff availability due to layoffs within the brick and mortar world has actually been incredible. So we actually have people calling us every couple of weeks saying, hey, do you have a full-time spot? Hey, do you have a full-time spot yet? Because so many of these people got laid off. All of the daycare facilities, at least in my market, are still half staff or less. They can only have half the capacity still with everything that's going on. And that's unlikely to change. And I hate to say it, but probably there's going to be a few of these facilities that aren't going to make it. So the demand is going to even go up even further. So we're interviewing people for shifts and, like I said, to work towards that 24-hour model. But we currently have a waiting list for staff, which is just, I mean, that's incredible. I've never had a business like that yet until now. So the major important thing is happy staff is happy customers, because our directors, like as a business owner, I'm not there taking care of the kids every day, right? I take care of the back office and sales and recruiting and things of this nature. That having amazing staff and having them well trained to deal with challenges when they come up and allergies, and right now being really diligent about if somebody has a sniffle, they go home. Right. And the parents know that, and being in touch with the parents is also really important to communication, letting them know, hey, here's a new policy. Like we've just got, temperature guns to just double check everybody because it's getting into the fall season. We're always adding extra little precautions to make sure that our customers are happy, our parents are happy. Like, let's face it, it's been tough. Just like Bruce said, when things started to go down and everything was locked down, we talked to our parents and said, hey, how are you doing? How's everything with work? Are you going to be okay? We have a month-to-month contract, 30 days notice as well. So somebody can't just cancel in the middle of the month because we have to do showings and bring new people in as far as the customers are concerned. But we were really in touch with them and said, hey, are you going to be able to, are you okay? You're going to be able to afford everything? Like, do we need to work something out, or do you need help? Just simply that, like with anything, not just within the day home box. We were really in touch with our customers and really in touch with our staff to help them feel comfortable that we're taking all the precautions. They feel safe. Anything they need an alcohol wipe, we'll drive to Lethbridge, which is far from Calgary for those of you out east, to go pick them up and bring them to the directors, because they're absolutely the keystone of this business. So we also go and get the groceries for all the ladies, so they don't even have to go pick up bread or food or nothing. All the craft supplies, we deliver that to the house for them. And then 95% of our customers prior to the pandemic were by ways of referral and free online marketing channels, which is great. So it's a low marketing expense, but that's changed a bit now just with the dynamics. So we're doing some advertising and some Facebook ads and so forth. And we got 5 homes that are separated by age. So that's why I say the kids go from infant, graduate up the age groups from each house to house. So by groups of 5 is how the business model is set up.
So Ken, sorry, Ken. So Tim, I think that last point is very important. Every year for the last, I guess, 25 years, I take my family to Red Pine Camp on Golden Lake, and you know, and the same 350 or 400 campers go the same week every year. So my kids, some of their best friends, they met not at school, but at Red Pine Camp, and they all grew up together as a cohort. And what you have done is you've replicated that. I didn't know that until, of course, just now. I mean, I looked at your slide deck, but I missed this point. That is absolutely brilliant. It's that culture that you've created that creates the stickiness. Now, something else you told me, I think, I may have got this wrong, but I think there was a portfolio of 70 or 72 additional homes that you were thinking about buying. Did I get that right?
So that was the gentleman that I was introduced to this business through, which is also through real estate, that they're in real estate. So him and his partner had 68 or 70, I'm not sure which, at one point here in Calgary. So they had that many at one point, and slowly they've kind of sold them off in packages. And the other thing that they've done, and I'll get to this in a couple slides here, is this is one of the other scale up and scale down abilities with this business, is to be able to sell that property to one of your staff, which is another amazing option too. I think we might have another question.
We do have another question from Denise and Stuart. You know, Denise and Stuart are good friends of mine, but they always ask the tough questions. Thanks, Denise. Thanks, Stuart. When hiring, do you also do background checks on adult family members living with the director? So if you have an early childhood educator and she has a significant other, you know, what is that situation like?
Yep, absolutely. So we do background checks on all of our staff, of course, and every adult person living in the home. Yeah, they all have background checks. And if it's a male husband or whatever, they have to have a situation where they're not home during the day. They can come home and grab something and leave if they need a tool, of course, but they're not present during business hours. So by the numbers, because everybody likes to see some numbers. So this is an example for a 5-home group. So each 5 homes, gross revenues 580, net margins about 21%, and EBITDA is over 120,000 a year. So valuation on each.
So everybody knows what EBITDA is. Can you explain that?
Oh, earnings before taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
That's what we call cash flow when you're a simple person like me.
That's right. Kate, next slide there, please.
Well, I'm not letting you go that quickly on the numbers. So the cash flow from 5 homes is about $120,000. That's, like Tim said, it's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. It means it's your cash flow. And
it's your NOI.
Your net operating income. Thank you. And for those of you who understand that, Tim has valued the net operating income of the business. So this is the business. It is not the real estate. The real estate would be in addition to that. So let's say somebody on this call wanted to license Tim's model. You know, I think he might consider that. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And if I were a younger person, I'd be very interested in this model. You know, my wife and I could certainly have 5 or 10 of these homes ourselves. So your business, if you have 5 homes, is worth $360,000, and it produces some nice cash flow. That's the business. In addition to that, hopefully you own the 5 homes, and you know, maybe each of those homes are worth $500,000. So you can see how it works. And then when you sell the business, if you ever decide to sell it, you can sell the business separate from the real estate. All right, you could keep the real estate and sell the business, right? Or you could sell the real estate and keep the business, or you could sell both together or separately. So it gives you lots of options. Would that be fair to say, Tim?
That's absolutely right.
And we have one more question from Jason. Jason Means, thanks for joining us from Belleville. In a single home, is there typically only one director? Are there ever cases where 2 directors might live in a home? and have 6 kids per director? I think that's kind of a cool question. Jason
That's
has a beautiful property that he's renovating in Belleville. He showed it to me. It's humongous. And I think he might be interested in this model, Tim.
That's a great question. So for the regulations in our market, it's only one director would live there. However, sometimes we might have a family member that, and this is in their slides, but a family member might sublease from us a apartment, single room downstairs, and they might be a sub. So they can't be the primary director, but they may help out or sub if they have a doctor's appointment and that kind of thing. But it's only one director per house. Great question. So a little bit about the numbers in our marketplace there. So full-time placements $13.50, and that prorates down for each day of the week. Drop-in rates, which we're not doing right now, just because of the safety of our directors and our children. That average occupancy runs about 90%. We're about 85% now, just because of that little bit of a reduction. Things are starting to ramp back up now. We're doing a lot of tours headed into the fall here, and drop-in rate 70, 75 a day. Sometimes we might do a little promotion on the drop-in for Christmas and things like this. So by season, you can have different, promotions and, gifts and things like that to entice people in around Christmas season. Because sometimes parents just need a little extra time to go shopping and get the turkey and get all that ready and stuff like that. So we generally are closed Christmas week. Is the only time we're generally closed, but all stat holidays, of course, we're off.
And think about this, you guys. Having an 85 or 90% occupancy during a pandemic is incredible when you think about the fact that a lot of people are stuck at home and they can look after their kids themselves. So to maintain that kind of a occupancy rate, Tim, there'd be a lot of people in the office building rental space and the shopping mall rental space who would be like overjoyed at
yes, that number
90%. As you know, I mentioned to you, I think on another call that we did, that a client of mine owns a 750,000 square foot shopping mall, and 65% of the stores in that mall are closed and can't pay their rent. So you've done very well, I think.
Much better than, thankfully, our rentals in Alberta have done well. We've got great tenants, and again, we communicate with them. We're thankful, very grateful for that, but I would not want to be in the retail space in my market.
Gosh, it's really tough. And it's not only tough because of the COVID restrictions, it's tough because you're competing against internet providers. Like the days, of you and I, say, Tim, running a shoe store are over. Zappos.com, which is an Amazon store, online store, probably stocks 5 or 6 million different pairs of shoes, athletic wear, formal wear, you name it. They can deliver it through Prime in a couple of hours. Can you imagine trying to run a shoe store today and competing with an Amazon company? It would be very, very difficult. Pam Cripps has another question. You sure you're okay if I continue to interrupt with questions, Tim?
Oh, of course. Yeah, no, I love it. I love the questions.
Okay, good.
That's awesome.
I just want to make sure we're not disturbing your flow too much. But anyway, Pam says, do any of your directors accept subsidized daycare spots?
That's a great question. So we're not, we don't directly take the subsidy. So 2 reasons. One, from business model perspective, we want a certain clientele, because in any business, and Bruce, correct me if you think this is wrong, but there's the low market, the luxury market, and there's the mid market. So the mid-market's kind of where businesses go to die, because it's got the most competition, the least loyal customers. You want to be between the middle and the high. So we're actually underpriced for what we could charge for our area, just by a little bit. So it's still affordable, but we've got a client that has a certain income, job profile, things of that nature. Like, we've got an ideal client that we like. And typically they're not subsidized, but those programs in Alberta anyways, and I can't speak for Ontario, but those subsidies go directly to the parent and then they pay us. So that's how that works in our marketplace. And I would think that's pretty similar with a lot of other programs. They come from the federal to the parent, not the daycare facility. If they're accredited, then that's where that might go directly to the operation. Great question. I get that asked sometimes by our parents. So this is the next section. So how to build your portfolio through this business model. So properties for the day homes, they could either be rented or they could be purchased. So that's a choice, and you can do either or. So in the beginning, just like the Airbnb folks, like you can sublease and do all that type of business model. It's basically a sublease. You put your business in it, you run your business, and then you save up a down payment and say, hey, Mr. Landlord, I want this house. Can I buy it? Right? Maybe even buy it on terms and get creative. And there's all kinds of ways to get your business's foot in the door so that you can get the real estate later. So we got both in our operation. We own some, rent some. So I want to just go over an example of the numbers. So $1,500 a month is one of our homes. And revenue after expenses, we're targeting $2,000 a month per house. So that can go up if you have environment where you can have the family members living with the director, or you've got spaces rented. So that's another option to increase the revenue there. And as Bruce talks about animation, you can do other things to the property, landlord permitting, of course. And if it's your house, then you can certainly do that. Go ahead, next slide there, Bruce.
Just before you talk about this slide, Pam Cripps, did you hear what on the previous slide what Tim said? Right? You know, just so you know, Tim, Pam Cripps is the executive director of the Emily Murphy Nonprofit Housing Corporation, and I especially wanted I wanted everybody on the call who's on the call, but I especially wanted Pam and her crew to look at this, because this model it works in some very amazing ways. For example, you know, somebody who is perhaps a single mom with one or two children of her own, you know, is living in a subsidized situation. This model where you aren't buying the homes, but you're renting them, but still making money, you know, if you sort of see what I'm getting at, is an opportunity for some of these women.
I'm happy you brought that up. I'm happy you brought that up, Bruce, because that might answer a question somebody might be thinking, in fact. So with a 6 kids to 1 caregiver ratio, if that caregiver's children are in the home, they're exempt from the total. Okay.
Oh, is that right?
Yes, it is. So that's how it works in our jurisdiction anyways, that it may or may not be similar elsewhere. I can't speak to legislation across the country, of course, but I can say that at least for our market, you can absolutely do that. So if you had a mom that's subsidized and she wants to work with us, get trained, then she could have her kids there too, which again, then they're saving on all that childcare, and they get to earn an income, and it's just a beautiful thing to have that. So thanks for bringing that up, Bruce. And so this is an option here, sort of an example of, you know, properties purchased with the proper animation. So here's a property that we're in the process of moving on. So the mortgage would probably go $3,500 a month. This is a nicer house in a very nice southwest neighborhood of Calgary. That'd be the all-in cost with the taxes, bills, and all of that. So the 2 roommates would be in this property. They're paying $1,000 a month each. So that's $2,000 a month revenue from there. You could have $2,500, $3,000 a month. It just depends on the size of the property that you're looking at. So don't be afraid of getting a little bit of a bigger home with the intention of renting out those properties, or maybe doing a basement microsuite. There's, I mean, multiple options that you can do here to subsidize the cost of that home, to squish it down so you're meeting your target. So then the director, like I said, pays $800 a month in rent. I mean, look at the cost delta between $800 and $3,500. They get to live in a 3,000 square foot house at a beautiful neighborhood with, you know, lakes and all kinds of beautiful amenities, where, you know, that director wouldn't have that opportunity otherwise, which I just love that. Next slide, please. So the net profit on that property there, with the rent included, would be $1,300 a month. So I use this as an example because 2,000 is your target. So you rent the house, you're going to be making 2,000, maybe 2,500 a month. You buy the house, of course you got to put a down payment in, but you maybe not with the Mad River strategy. If you really work with Bruce and learn that from him, that $1,300 a month, you're still cash flowing and you're paying down that property. So I want you to think for a minute. In your portfolio, how many properties do you need to have paid down to zero, and having $1,500, you know, $1,300, $2,500 a month in cash flow, totally net going into your pocket? Do you need to retire? Is it 5? Is it 10? Is it 15? I mean, the business itself makes $120,000 a year. So once that portfolio gets paid down, now you've got all this equity you can borrow against tax-free and expand the business, or cash it out and buy a boat, whatever you want to do. Next slide, please. I wouldn't recommend buying a boat. It's a terrible investment. So yeah, the ROI.
You know what they say, right? the ways to waste your money, get a horse, buy a boat.
Yeah, or a ski hill. So your ROI goes up, like your IRR increases as the mortgage gets paid down. Yeah, go ahead, next slide there. So this is exactly what Bruce is talking about here. So if you wanted to put a day home in your home, it only occupies the main floor. And you have the rooms upstairs for naps for the infant children. And once they go graduate away from naps, then you don't have to have that extra space. So depending on the age of the home, you can put a day home in your property and have that in your principal residence, and you could have your kids there, and they don't have to go anywhere, and then allow that to pay your mortgage plus have cash flow over and above. So the business is making you money, in your house that you live in, depending on the size and topology, you could have no mortgage. Can you imagine? My property where I live isn't suited for this, but I would have done it already if I could have. This is the way that you can live mortgage free. And change your liability, which I believe that your house is generally liability, and this is the way you can turn it into an asset, which is what Bruce talks about all the time. The magic of real estate and having a business model combined is you can live mortgage free in your own home with a very low maintenance business. Yeah, Bruce, go ahead.
This is just a question for me. So if I did something like this in my home, my wife and I, for example, would it be true to say that your home is your home-based business, that some of your mortgage interest is now tax deductible?
I'm not an accountant, but I believe that would be the case. I
No,
certainly
I
write off
think it
my home
is
office.
because, I have a little office here that's my coaching practice. And every year my bookkeeper asks me, how's your home-based business doing, Bruce? How many rooms in your house do you do you use for your coaching? And these days it's only one, because I can't have people in the house anymore, unfortunately. So she always deducts, I think, some of my utilities as business expenses. Maybe it's 10% or 20%, I don't remember. And then I think she deducts mortgage interest, for the portion of the house that's occupied for her business. So I do think if maybe half the house was used for a day home, you could actually convert your mortgage interest into a tax deduction, or at least part of it.
I know at least part of it because I let my accountant work their magic, and I write off everything I can do legally, ethically, and above board. So I believe this would be the similar treatment, and possibly with a larger footprint. So maybe that percentage, Bruce, might even go up.
I think it would.
Yeah, I think it would. Great question. So the model could also be adapted to have the director, if they've got the skills and the want, is they could take one of those other bedrooms and convert that to an elder care situation. So the average caregiver fee that someone will pay if they're in a big facility with white walls and a hospital style environment, which I don't believe is the way of the future, and especially with what's going on now, I believe the trend from big elder care facilities either going to be redesigned, or there's going to be a major push to private facilities. So you can have a director that can run the day home, but also have an assisted living elder care tenant. And they range from about $2,500 and up, depending on the level of care they need. So that's another animation, another option that you can have one of those types of clients living in the property. And then you can see $1,000 rent goes to $3,000 or $3,500 or $4,000 a month. Then you can really accelerate the cash flow or accelerate the pay down if you're buying the property and get out of that mortgage faster.
So Tim, just for everybody on this call, what Tim is just, he just sprung on us there in this slide, is a life-changing, game-changing thing. If you guys think about it, let's say you had a four-bedroom house and you took in two elders at, say, $2,500 or $3,000 a month to provide care for them. I can tell you, my mother-in-law lives with us, and it's a much better situation than, in my opinion, than being in a long-term care facility where you're incredibly isolated and also very vulnerable. But there's one other aspect to it as well. So I pointed out the financial change. Can you imagine adding another $5,000 or even $6,000 a month in cash flow? That some of that could be shared with the director. Some of that could have obviously come to you as the business owner and if you own the property and the homeowner. But in addition to that, I do know many people in the retirement home business, and they like to co-locate next to daycare facilities. They like to locate next to schools because a lot of the elders want to do some volunteer work. If they're go-go elders, they'll go across the street and, they'll help out, for kindergarten, for grade 1, whatever. They'll do what they can to help out, help the teachers aides. And now what Tim is saying is that you could have 2 elders living with you, and if they're fairly go-go elders, it keeps people alive. I don't like the idea of being in a ghetto where everybody you see, I'm 68, everybody you see is 68, or if I was 96, like my mother-in-law, where you're just hanging out in a ghetto of old people basically waiting to pass away. I think this is a much better model, and financially, this slide, I think, Tim, makes a big difference.
And like I say, you can be flexible with this. I mean, you can have whatever animation you feel makes sense for that other tenant in that property. Maybe it's a tenant that is a mechanic and there's a big garage that no one needs. Then they can rent out that and have augmented tenancy there, and they've got a live-work condition. It doesn't need to be just one person having that live-work condition in the same property, as long as that's the right size and the right conditions.
Can you repeat that, Tim? I'm sure everybody else on the call understood that, but I missed that.
So the animations here, we talk about elder care, we talk about having just regular tenants. You could also have an augmented tenancy with a tenant in the basement where they live there and they pay rent, but they also might have a workshop in the garage in the back if you've got a big double garage. And they could rent that and have a little shop there, woodworking, mechanic, bike shop, whatever it might be. Then that person can live and work in the same place too, because the mechanic doesn't want to commute 2 hours any more than you or I do. So this is about let the business you fully control, pay down the mortgage, and then you can refinance that mortgage tax-free and buy more, but bigger, better properties, or expand your business. And the great part here is the tenant works for your business. So they never wreck the place that they live in.
Wow.
I've never seen a staff member in an office building other than on TV go and trash the office. One day the boss comes in and the whole office floor is destroyed. I've never seen it happen. So it doesn't happen in this environment because that we love them and they love us. That's the best relationship between employer and employee, but we don't have that problem, right? So I think somebody might have mentioned in the chat earlier that you've got a great tenant. You've got a great tenant because they work for you. They're great people, and they're never going to mess up the place they work. And they love the kids so much they hate to be off, right? And the kids miss the directors, and it's just great. So someone like that that's taking care of children is never going to wreck you.
So,
or at least the chances are as small as they possibly can be in any environment I've ever seen.
I call this a create your own client model. Because basically, think about that. I mean, I buy a rental property, I advertise for lease. I get 30 random people applying for it. I try and pick a good tenant. That is, it is a bit of a lottery. It is a bit of a gamble, but I think in this case, it's much less of a gamble, and you're creating your own clients who are really trustworthy clients. We have another question from Pam Cripps. Where are you running the food service from? Is it a daily service or, whoops, I missed that, sorry, or once a week, a delivery to the home?
So depending on the home, it's every other week we do groceries and we drop them off. One of our team members drops them off at the front door, and all the bags are washed and sanitized and everything. They're very careful and very diligent with that. All of our directors keep those homes cleaner than mine. And I'm also very careful because I'm the owner of this business. So it's a weekly drop off. Or sorry, every other week.
So Jackie is asking if you add an elder care component, is there a concern that those elders would be exposed to children and they might get sick?
So the areas are separate, and I would say, in my view, far less exposed than being in a big facility and having to do their own groceries and everything else, because most of those seniors just love going to the grocery store and doing all of that. where in this environment, and that's not the environment I have, just to be clear, that's we don't have elder care folks in our facilities at the moment. But if you've got grocery delivery, you can have grocery delivery for the elder care clients too. So they don't have to leave the house and go out and touch things and be exposed to touch points and touching ATMs and all.
You hire, Eva O'Grady asks, do you hire an outside service, excuse me, for cooking or cleaning, or is that done by the director?
The directors do that, and they are amazing at it. Great question. Yeah, so I like to call this low maintenance wealth building as much as it possibly could be, because you manage the business, you drop off groceries, take care of craft supplies, you talk to the parents, you get to manage the business, not work in it. And that's a beautiful thing of having staff and having systems and having a full program in place, is you just keep the program running and you make little tweaks and adjustments as needed. Next slide. So a little bit about the cost to set up for first and last month's rent. Of course, that varies a bit by region. It's about 10 to 15,000 to pay for your staff wages, to hire them, pay your first and last month's rent, a little bit, not much if you're going to ramp things up organically and be strategic about it, is you want to find your customer first in business, right? You want to bring your customers in, you have your waiting list, and then you open up a home, you go look to hire a director and move that along. You don't want a house you're paying a mortgage on or paying rent in where you've got this burn and you don't have customers, right? So you don't want to do that. So that's why the budget is about 10 to 15K per house. And then break even at our rates in our marketplace is 2 to 3 full-time spots. And then it's very resistant to economic downturns. As I said earlier, we've been through this whole COVID thing. Of course, we did have a little bit of reduction, but now we're ramping back up, and we've never had to do advertising. So that was a bit of a adjustment for us, because it was really self-perpetuating until the pandemic hit. And I don't know of many businesses other than in trucking and things that are really essential services that have been that resistant to the shift we've seen. And then you've got an opportunity to scale up and scale down, because it's easy to add another property, whether you're going to rent or you're going to purchase that home. And I'm not going to get into JDs outside of context for this, or lenders, and Bruce can teach you about the Mad River strategy, but you can acquire homes, because then you can see the setup cost for this business is so small, right? Versus the cost of buying a house, putting a down payment in, doing renos and putting a basement suite in, dealing with the city council for permits. And my gosh, everything I've done in real estate, this is one of the easier things that I've seen to be able to scale your portfolio, and you can scale back, right? We closed one property for a stretch, because one of our directors went, she had to have just medical stuff. I'm not going to go into detail, but that's medical stuff. So we close it down and then let her do her thing, and then we can open back up. So you can expand and contract the business based on what the market's telling you and based on your growth goals. So it's flexible in that way. All you got to do is pay the rent, pay the bills, versus having a massive manufacturing facility in other businesses where you've got this huge burn no matter what happens in the market. So you've got some agility, which I really like. Next slide, please.
Just before you go, a couple of questions. These are mine. Sorry if I'm butting in again, but
I just want to stay on time.
Oh, we got lots of time. We finish. We always finish on time or a little bit early. So we've got another 20 or 25 minutes to go, but we don't have to take up the whole time. Once we're finished, we're finished. We're not going to keep people any longer. But do you have any signage, like on the house or on the front lawn, or there's no signage whatsoever?
There's no signage for a couple of reasons. One being security. We don't necessarily want to advertise to the world that this is a day home, just because it's not like a brick and mortar. And secondly, that's sort of a landlord discussion. But there is no signage on the buildings currently.
Say that last thing again.
That would be up to the landlords in the lease properties. So that's never a discussion that we've fielded.
Well, you know what they say, Tim, the smaller the sign, the more important the company.
I haven't heard that before.
Well, you could go to Geneva in Switzerland, and you could see a little sign this size on the door, just, nice little brass plaque, announcing that this is the home of such and such a bank. And you go inside the building and you find out this is one of the most extraordinary buildings, extraordinary businesses worth tens of billions of dollars of Swiss francs. So they do say, it's like the shorter your CV, the more important you are. If you get a 10-page CV resume from somebody, they're very unimportant. Whereas if you get a CV from, say, the President of the United States that has the presidential seal and says Barack Obama, that's his entire CV, right? You don't need
Got
anything
it.
else.
Got it.
So the smaller the sign, and when you have a sign that's invisible, you must be very important. One more question. Dan Doré is on the call, and his company, Doré Property Management, they manage 600 or 700 units. Can I ask you this question? Dan has a lot of landlord clients that he manages their properties, okay? So I'm just sort of trying to figure out all the combinations and permutations, and I'm getting a headache from your lecture. It's such a good lecture. And by the way, people are just, going through and chatting up on the chat box saying the same thing. It's not just me saying it, Tim, but say Dan wanted to go to a landlord and say, look, this is a wonderful business model I learned about through the ROI group, last Wednesday. So I think what I see, your day home business being is kind of like a platform that other people can build wealth on. I think that's the whole thing. I mean, you started by saying your number one priority is to help people build wealth. So I think Dan, as a property manager, rather than just saying, look, I've rented the place. I think there is a model where property managers who have hundreds of units, or maybe thousands, could actually introduce that model to landlords as well.
Well, I think that's a great point, and I think that also brings up another great question. You're just so good at this. You can read my mind. That we have one property management property that we deal with the property management company, and they love it because here's the thing: that as a residential landlord, you get the quality and the sticking power and the maintenance and the love for the property of a commercial tenant, and some commercial tenants are terrible. So because our business runs in there, we're always going to pay on time. We're always going to take good care of it. We're going to mow the lawn. We're going to do everything that's in our lease to the letter of the law all the time. Of course, I do that anyways, but they get the quality of a commercial tenant in a residential environment, which they love.
Just for you, Dan, because I think it is a fabulous model. I'm not saying you should do anything with it, Dan. I'm just saying I really like this model. But if you think about what Jen Walton does, or did and still does, build up a huge portfolio of third-party homes that she doesn't own, but she manages them for Airbnb. I don't know what she gets in terms of her property management fee, but it's not 6 or 8 or even 10%. It's 15, 20, or 25%. So if there was a division of Doré Property Management that was involved with the day home business, and some of your landlords wanted that, and you mentioned instead of getting 6, 8, or 10%, you might get a management fee much larger than that. So there you go. So I don't know if that's viable. Dan, I'm coming to you in a minute. Just give me a second here. Dan, I'm coming to you in a sec. And you should unmute yourself because I think this is a really important conversation. But the last one from Pam Cripps. Pam, you're getting a lot of questions in here. We're going to start charging per question, right? So Pam asks, what is the zoning for home-based business? Can it be in an R1 zone, a residential first zone?
It can, yeah.
So
in
Pam,
Calgary can. I can't.
That is almost everywhere I coach in the United States, in Canada. Almost everywhere I coach, the R1 zone, which is the most heavily regulated, does allow home-based businesses. I think this will work everywhere. Dan, over to you.
Yeah, just want to confirm. Thank you, Tim. This is very informative. I love that you took the time to do so. We've actually been involved in situations like this with third-party companies that would actually bring in their own people for this type of environment. So I was curious to see how Tim was proposing it, but we've actually we have a couple of clients that have group homes where we do the management, but they do all the staffing, all the day-to-day stuff, but we just take care of the real estate. So we have a few clients now, and we've had other clients in the past that would basically staff the operational side of what you're suggesting, and we would manage the real estate part of the equation. So it's interesting to be proposed as an all-in-one. So, but thank you for taking the time for this, Tim. Appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Tim, we have another question from Jason Means from Belleville again. What amount of time are you working on the business for your, say, your 5 houses? Is it a 60-hour work week? Is it a 10-hour work week? Or is it like
we'll get there.
Said 4 hours?
That's in one of the slides here coming up, and we're almost to the end. So I'll get to your question here on one of the slides, if that's all right. So here's one of the other things you can do. So this is what I meant about scaling up and scaling down. And the partner I know in this space that had so many of them, what they can do is they can sell them off to the directors, because the directors are making good money considering their entire compensation package, and they save a ton of money because they're not spending almost ridiculous money on commuting, all this other stuff. So you could sell, you might own the home and the business rents it back to you, but you could sell that property as an option. And if you're a realtor, you get a bonus, you can charge a commission. That, and you can do this even with a leased property from a vendor, is then you can have the director own that home, and now they're going to stay for the long term, right? They're a very long-term staff member now because they live where they work and they own the property, and they're building equity. And they're building equity by working for the business. So that's a great solution to be able to help them get qualified and things like this, because sometimes people need a bit of guidance to go through that. And most don't think they can, right? And I believe it's part of my mandate. It's to show people how they can get into real estate, how they can build a portfolio, whatever way that is. And that's also an option within this business model to help your staff buy the house. And that's great, because now they're a homeowner too. They live where they work and it's theirs. And then you can go buy another property, get another staff member, and build your own portfolio. So you're helping your staff build their wealth as well. And typically their family members live with them as well, and they rent some of the properties. So they all kind of work as a family to build their family net worth. It's not just your staff in a lot of cases, which is great. So after the launch phase and setting up the property and getting your staff hired, it's relatively minimal marketing needed for maintenance. Next slide there, please. So here it is. There's your answer to your question, Jason. It's about 10 to 15 hours a week of maintenance to deal with the booking and recruiting and manage the marketing and talk to the staff and dropping off of groceries, things like this. You don't have to drop off groceries. I mean, you can pay your staff to do it, and they would do it. You can do click and collect from various grocery stores and just have it delivered to the door. That's a logistical choice. And as you scale, I mean, you can't be running around and doing groceries for 3 straight days. I mean, that's not a good way to run a business. Then you're working in it, not on it. So we have one of our team members do the deliveries right now, but it's 10 to 15 hours. So it's really not much considering the net operating income for 10 to 15 hours a week. And you can scale and also recruit one of your, is this a matter of scale? So this is in our plan. We already have the gal picked out that we just love her to bits, that she's going to be offered the position of operations manager. So then you can further reduce your labor effort to scale the business larger, because you bring on one of your staff to be the operations manager, and then they take care of the day-to-day stuff, groceries, logistics, picking up craft supplies, managing the bookings for incoming customers, and all those sorts of tasks, so that you can pull yourself out of the business, whether that's now, medium term, long term, because as you can see, the value of this business can start really growing. And like Bruce said, you can just sell the business off for 800, 900, 1.5 million. You keep the real estate and let that get paid off by the new business owner. So this is a very flexible model insofar as you've also got multiple exit strategies as you look towards retirement or look towards moving on to the next thing, and keeping the real estate, which is the foundation underneath. And of course, you have to watch your business. It's very important. Even with that, if you have an operations manager, you handle all the money, do all the bookkeeping, do all of that. And that's part of just keeping your business healthy and being in touch with your customers, and having events and being in touch with them, and just really being involved as an owner. Even though you're not in it all the time, you're still involved with your customers. It's amazing how many people, business owners, just unplug and no one sees them anymore, and businesses have challenges. But if you're still involved and still in there, then your business will thrive, and your directors and your management staff will, you're there to support them and there to watch the business so that things continue to run smooth after you've built something very valuable. So next slide there, please.
Just before I do that, Tim, I have to tell you that that last point is absolutely brilliant. I didn't know that you know that. You know, a lot of people will come and see me and tell me I want passive income. I don't want to do any work. And
No
that's
such
just
thing.
you know, unfortunately, when you hear that from a real estate coach, you know you have a really bad coach, because there is no such thing as a free lunch. There really isn't. I mean, there's work involved. And the fact that Tim knows that at a relatively young age, you know, just tells me what a good quality guy he is.
So here's the last section. It's real quick. I want to make sure we get all the questions if there's any more. So you can contact our team if this is something that interests you. We'd be happy to help you out with that. And we do have a licensing model available. Determine which portfolio strategy best suits your circumstances. Like I said, I mean, I'm a real estate coach, and I always like to look at where you're at, where you are today, where you want to go, and reverse engineer a solution that'll work for you. Because, you know, buying 5 properties may not be in your wheelhouse now, but there's other ways that you can get into those properties and make this business work. And whatever that is for you will help you figure that out. And then we've got a full service launch package with proprietary systems, because we don't want you chasing people for money. We've got automatic billing systems that we help you set up, employee agreements, the documentation for customers, all the contracts, all of our intellectual property, our meal plans and menus, the whole enchilada. So it's similar to you know, franchise models. So you've got everything you need to be able to execute in this business, and that way you're all set up. And of course, the guidance to help you implement those systems and deal with the marketing and hiring guidelines and everything that is involved with getting everything started, what you need for toys. And, you know, there's a lot of logistics going behind the back end, and those systems are all in place. Next slide, please.
Just before we do that, I want to reinforce what Tim has just said. I'm lousy at selling myself, but I'm really good at selling other people. And what I would say to support what Tim just said is that for a few percent of your revenues to have a license agreement with Tim and his group, so that you could do 5 homes in Ottawa, 5 homes in Nashville, I mean, whatever town or city you happen to be in, 5 in Belleville, Ontario, where Jason is, you know, to me, you know, the few percentage points that you give up of your revenues to license the intellectual property that he's developed over a period of time, that really is a shortcut to success. You know, a lot of people say, well, this is easy, I can do it on my own, and check back in a couple of years and it's an absolute disaster, right? You got to remember, we're dealing with you know, young people, the lives of young people. There's a lot of responsibility. If you add an elder care, you're dealing with the lives of older people. So to me, you know, that's really, really valuable. Tim, would it be okay to ask you to type in your email address in the chat box so people can see it?
Yeah, for sure.
Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah.
So I would strongly recommend that you guys, you know, you got to remember, you got to take it out of the chat box, because after the call's over, the chat box will disappear to my computer and you won't have it. And so, excuse me. So Tim just put his email address in there, and he put in his phone number. So you should really take it down, in my opinion. We do have a question here for you, and we're almost finished, guys. We will finish on time, or maybe even a little early if we're lucky, for Major Gus. Instead of a 24/7 daycare, would you ever consider just doing 1 after-hours shift?
I think that's a great idea. We were looking at doing 2 shifts just because, well, when I like to do something, I like to go all in. So that's just my personality. So if I want to help that market, so one of my friends, his wife's a paramedic, and we kind of floated the idea, again, this is about pre-selling, find your customer first, to find out the demand in our marketplace. And I believe we would have a list of 50 families that would need it. So it would just crush me personally if we only had availability to help 6 of those 50. So I'd want to do 2 shifts to really, you know, help that. That was my thought on the matter, but now that you mentioned it, like, I learn all the time. I learn everything. I learn something new every day. We're not growing, we're dying. That I think that's an incredible idea, that you could just, you know, do a 1 shift evening and do that. So I absolutely think that's completely viable. But that was kind of my thought on it, was to be able to do the 2 full shifts because there's so much demand.
Yeah, there's a lot of demand for that.
Off, I think
I do have a client who does 24/7, 364 day a year daycare, and she owns 3 of them, and it has made her a wealthy woman. Jason has another question. I think we're going to start charging Jason as well for each question. Is your model better suited to an urban home or a rural home?
This model's centered around urban, like urban areas, not rural. That said, rural areas need childcare too, so I don't see any reason why you couldn't make that work in a rural area, especially because you're, again, reducing that drive. I mean, good grief. I'm sure there's 10 families in a rural area that would love to not have to drive their kids into town, and then they could, play in a huge yard and, run around, with a dog, or who knows, right? I think that's absolutely possible. That's not our current mandate. We want to grow within our current, lane. Also, you can't do too much in business, otherwise you start to dilute your efforts a little bit. But I think certainly that's absolutely viable, and I would bet there's even more of a need in rural, because I don't know anyone that's doing it. Bruce might know someone, but I've never seen it.
For sure, rural would work. I know that because I'm very familiar with rural development. But one thing I do know, Jason, is that you want to, if I were doing this model, I would want to keep a tight geography. In other words, if I was in a rural area and I had 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of these, they would all be within relatively short commute distance. Now, in the rural areas, that would be much larger than an urban area. But if I was in an urban area, if I was in Toronto, I wouldn't be in Mississauga and Etobicoke and I mean, holy smokes, you'll drive yourself crazy that way. I mean, think about how, Mississauga is a huge city. So I would want to be a Mississauga base and very focused on that, so that you have a tight geography. Because as Tim said, you want to keep an eye on everything. And if you have to drive all around Toronto or all around Boston, half of Massachusetts, it's a bit.
Well, and that's a great point that Jason brings up, is they are geographically in the same quadrant. So in Calgary, we've got 4 corners. We've got northwest, southwest, northeast, and southeast. So one of our operations is in the northwest, and the other operations in the southwest, just because of that logistics, groceries, and also the parents don't want to drive around town either. That's what the whole regional school and growing up together principle is, that they're together in that area of town. But I think his comments there, 10 to 50 minute drive, that's no problem. Like I said, my friend drove 40 minutes to go from where he lived to the day home that he loved, that he found a caregiver he liked. So within a 20-minute drive, no problem at all. So again, ongoing support and guidance from our licensed team, financial consulting to help bring this to investors, because I've done a little bit of that over the years and got a lot of experience with putting things together for investors and even the bank. Because I believe strongly that this is a financeable business, that you could bring this to BC, to bring this to bank that you like, that there's lots of options, and we can certainly help you with guidance on that and get you in touch with some of our amazing people. I'm sure Bruce probably knows some great business finance folks as well. And our success is your success, because like I said, my vision is to help Canadians build wealth, and I just love this business model to death. And we love our directors, and it's a way to really scale your real estate portfolio and bring real estate and business together. I mean, it's just a match made in heaven. And there's my information, again, in case my super long email is hard to spell properly. Copy that out of the chat, or I'm sure this will be recorded, right, Bruce? So people can see that later. That's how you can get a hold of me if you have further questions. And that's our website and my real estate website as well.
So splashdayhomes.com. All right.
That's one. And then Little Steps Academy is going to be the rebrand as we expand everything.
Yeah. So I've been encouraging Tim to rebrand. Not that many people know what a day home business is. Frankly, I didn't know until Tim educated me. And then I didn't really like, I hope you don't mind me saying, Tim, I didn't really like Splish.
But that's fine. That was the existing
name. And then he said, hang on, I got the floor now. I can always mute you, you know. And then he springs on me that, well, I have this name, Little Steps Academy. I went, whoa, That is fantastic. Did you come up with a tagline yet?
I haven't nailed the tagline yet.
All right, so taglines are really important. You know, my brand is Prof. Bruce. My tagline, the main one I use, is making impossible possible. So, you know, you've got your brand, you've got your tagline, it's all part of your brand. So Little Steps Academy, what a beautiful name. Academy tends to say that you're not just parking the kids in front of TV all day, you're not feeding them craft dinner. You know, they are experiencing other things, being outdoors, maybe, you know, visiting a farm, who knows what is possible in the future. So it'll be, I think, Little Steps Academy, which is beautiful. I want to see 50,000 of these across North America. But I just want to hear your tagline when you have it. So we're wrapping up now. Everybody, I want you to join with me. I think there's a way I always forget. Here we are. I'm going to do it first. I'm going to give a clap to Tim. You can find the reactions, I think, at the bottom of your screen. Yeah, reactions. You just kind of wiggle your cursor. Oh, look at that. Thumbs up and a clap, clap, clap. It has been fantastic. Everybody on the call will get a copy of the recording. It goes up on YouTube unlisted, so don't put it, you know, on your Twitter feed, or don't put it on TikTok or anything like that, Snapchat, Facebook. It's just for the ROI group. You know, I wish more people could come live. We had about 35 today in total, which is a good turnout. You'll get another 200 views. And Tim, I really want this model. This is the right model to help people get out of you know, get out of jail free card. Wasn't that what it was in Monopoly? Anyway, you're getting all kinds of really great compliments in the chat box, and I'm just going to give you one more, you know, clap, clap, clap from me. So everybody, thanks so much for coming. As I said, you'll get a recording of this. The other people who couldn't attend live will also see it. Get in touch with Tim. It is really, really a great model, one of the best I've seen. And Tim, there's no question this was one of the best presentations I've seen at the ROI group. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Bruce. I really appreciate it. And, you know, thanks so much for having me today.
See you guys. Bye, everybody. Wave. Bye, Dan.
Have a good one.
Bye, Denise Stewart.